Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar delivers a special address on India's evolving role in global partnerships and trade at the CII Partnership Summit 2024. US President-elect Donald Trump calls President Joe Biden's pardon of son Hunter an abuse and miscarriage of justice. And Iran's foreign ministry says the country's military consultants will remain in Syria. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, while addressing the CII Partnership Summit in New Delhi, spoke about how India will deal with the second Trump government, saying that strategic convergences with the US have only grown deeper with time, and what lies ahead would be in fashioning the terms of engagement that are perceived and recognized to be mutually beneficial.
The advent of the second Trump administration, which Mr. Banerjee also referred to, is obviously a major consideration in business circles, and I'm not surprised you've spent some time debating it. Obviously, the only safe prediction is one of a degree of unpredictability. Different countries have had their own experiences from the first administration and would presumably draw from that to approach the second. I can state with confidence that the strategic convergences with the United States for India have only grown deeper with time. They have created a larger environment in which more collaborative possibilities can be explored today. Naturally, between two major economies, there will always be some give and take. When we look at economic or technology domains, the case for trusted and reliable partnerships have actually increased in recent years. So a lot of what lies ahead would be in fashioning terms of engagement that are perceived and recognized to be mutually beneficial. And in that regard, the more that India can bring to the table, the stronger will be our appeal.
The minister spoke about more partnerships for an economy such as India's that has risen to the 5th position globally and advancing further.
Even otherwise, an economy like India that has risen to the 5th position globally and advancing further needs more significant partnerships. Our stakes in the world are more, the responsibilities are greater, and indeed the expectations too are higher.
And Minister Jaishankar called for more partnerships at a time when the Ukraine conflict has created ripples as reflected in the food, fuel and fertilizer insecurities. He added that the Global South is also feeling the brunt of inflation, debt, currency shortages and trade volatility.
The Ukraine conflict has created its own ripples, reflected in food, fuel and fertilizer insecurities. The Global South is also feeling the brunt of inflation, of debt, of currency shortages and of trade volatility. In short, the world looks a very tough place. And tough situations call for more friends and more partners.
India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal addressed the inaugural session of the CII Partnership Summit 2024. Commerce and Tourism Ministers of South Africa, Qatar, Bahrain, Bhutan, Nepal, Algeria, Cambodia, Myanmar, Senegal, Israel and Italy participated in the event. Minister Piyush Goyal, along with KPMG and HSBC India, also launched a report titled Driving Make in India, a compendium of central and state government incentives. Addressing the event, the minister said that the goal of inclusive development can be achieved only through innovation and investment, and that India is ready to work with shared future and responsibility towards sustainability.
We look at the shared future. Very clearly, we all have responsibilities towards the environment, towards sustainability. But most of the countries on this platform are countries which are not the reason for the problem in the very first place. The damage to the environment was not caused by the global south or by the less developed or developing countries, but more by the developed countries. And therefore, this shared future, this shared responsibility towards sustainability, towards better supply chains, towards stable policies, will all have to be done with the recognition of a common but differentiated responsibility.
And P.K. Singh, the Secretary of India's Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, while speaking at the summit, said that India could meet the target of producing 7.5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030 and that the prices will come down within 2 years.
When we designed our green hydrogen mission, we said that we'll produce 5 million tons by 2030. With indications coming from industry, we can easily go up to 7.5 million tons by 2030. But then we had purposely kept 3.5 million tons for exports. Why? Because we realized that there was need for financing, there was need for technology, there was need for tie-up with other countries. And we do find a lot of export markets in Europe as well as in the Far East. And with the right technology in place, I'm sure that we can reach that stage.
On the sidelines of the summit, DD India's Jessica Taneja spoke with Edith Nordman about the shortage of skilled workers in Europe and the increasing demand for Indian workers.
We have with us Dr. Edith Norman. She is the chairman of the India-Netherlands Chamber of Commerce and Trade. Thank you for joining us here on DD India. Just a short while ago, you did mention that Europe would be dealing with a shortage of 50 million skilled workers by the end of 2050. And we heard something similar from the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, who was on a visit to India a short while ago, saying that there will be a major shortage of skilled workers, and encouraging Indian students and workers to come to Europe has become more important. Europe needs India more than India needs Europe. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's what I was also mentioning in my address at the Partnership Summit just right now. We need India much more than India needs us. And there is a shortage of skilled, young, vibrant people who are not only able but also willing to work. Whereas the European youth, I'm very sorry to say so, they look much more at their life-work balance than they look at their work-life balance.
What about visas and access to the markets? How does the visa issue get resolved?
That's a huge challenge at the moment, and that's also given by the geopolitical problems that we have at the moment in the world, where people quite honestly are trying to protect their own markets, and by doing that they don't make a difference between Indian young people and skilled people to come here that would be more than welcome, and others fleeing their countries for war reasons or economical reasons, and they simply don't make a huge difference between that. And everybody in Europe will not like me for saying that, but in general there is a fear for overflooding the European market, where we really need skilled people and people who want to contribute on the European continent.
After more than a week's tussle, a consensus has finally been reached to ensure the smooth functioning of both houses of India's Parliament. Speaking to the media, India's Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiren Rijiju said a broad consensus had been achieved for the effective running of both houses starting Tuesday. The decision reached following a meeting between the leaders of all major political parties and the Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla. There would be a special discussion on the Constitution of India in the lower house on the 13th and 14th of this month, and the same shall be discussed on the 16th and 17th in the upper house of the Parliament.
चलाएं। देश सुनना चाहता है, देखना चाहता है कि हमारा सांसद कैसे काम करते हैं। इसलिए कल से सुचारू रूप से पार्लियामेंट चलेगा, ऐसा एग्री हुआ है और ऐसा ही चलेगा, मुझे पूरा उम्मीद है। और सबसे अपील है कि हम जो रिमेनिंग हमारा शीतकालीन सत्र का जो समय हमारे पास है, हम अच्छी तरह से उपयोग करें। कांग्रेस पार्टी, टीएमसी सब मुद्दे रखने चाहते हैं, वो अपना जो नोटिस देंगे और स्पीकर साहब उसमें विचार करेंगे या चेयरमैन राज्यसभा में विचार करेंगे। कल से चर्चा शुरू होगी, ये अच्छी बात है।
Earlier in the day, both the Rajya Sabha or the upper house and the Lok Sabha or lower house of India's Parliament adjourned till Tuesday after ruckus by the opposition. In the upper house, Chairperson Jagdeep Dhankar rejected 20 notices on various issues submitted under Rule 267. Dhankar, equating the repeated disruptions in Parliament to Murphy's laws, urged lawmakers to allow proceedings and not make it dysfunctional.
Honorable members, you all are undoubtedly cognizant of Murphy's laws, and they indicate anything that can go wrong will go wrong. It appears that there exists a deliberate algorithm to actualize Murphy's laws in this august House, consequently impeding the proper functioning of Parliament. I implore this House to permit me to proceed with the business listed on today's agenda.
Meanwhile, the lower house proceedings witnessed disruptions because of repeated protests by the opposition members. Speaker Om Birla asked the opposition members to allow the questioner and said that they could take up their issues later. Amid the din, one question was taken up. Days after penning a note of appreciation for the film, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday attended a special screening of the Sabarmati report. The screening is taking place in the Balayogi Auditorium within the Parliament House complex. The Speaker of the lower house of Parliament, Om Birla, also attended the screening. The Sabarmati report, which hit the screens on 15th November, is based on the 2002 Godhra incident. The film has been declared tax-free in Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. In other news, the opening ceremony of the 16th session of Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification was held in Saudi Arabia's Riyadh. The UNCCD COP16 is being held under the theme Our Land, Our Future. Coinciding with the 30th anniversary of the UNCCD, the COP16 will be the largest UN land conference to date and the first UNCCD COP held in the West Asia, North Africa region. And in a symbolic gesture promoting environmental consciousness, India's Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav planted a sapling at the Indian Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, ahead of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification's COP16. The sapling planting ceremony aligned with India's Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam initiative, emphasizing the country's commitment to environmental stewardship. During his visit to the embassy, the minister engaged with Indian students.
We are here in Riyadh to participate in the UNCCD conference. The theme of the conference about the future challenges of drought and desertification of land. Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam, Tree for Mother Earth, is a unique movement and program started by our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. Actually, it is a program which is a climate action oriented, and we are here on this earth because of the reason it's our duty to plant a tree and make our earth as a green and clean.
And still to come on DD India Live. Ireland's two main centre-right parties begin seeking a coalition partner. And countries negotiating a global treaty to curb plastic pollution fail to reach an agreement.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Ireland's two main centre-right parties began seeking a coalition partner on Monday after Friday's election, which left them short of the 88 seats needed to form the government. The party, led by Prime Minister Simon Harris, won 20.8% of the vote, while Fianna Fáil secured 21.9%, maintaining results similar to the 2020 election. The Greens, the junior coalition partner, are expected to lose nearly all their seats. The coalition decision will involve either smaller left-wing parties or conservative independents. Despite concerns over political stagnation and issues such as housing and cost of living, many Dubliners express satisfaction with the likely coalition government. And now to updates from Syria. Russian and Syrian warplanes bombed the rebel-held city of Idlib on Sunday in an attempt to push back insurgents who have swept across northern Syria. The Syrian military rushed in reinforcements and said that it was preparing a major counter-attack, while Moscow's air force joined in the bombardment of Aleppo and Idlib. The Syrian forces have also been fortifying the northern province of Hama. Syrian state news agency Sana reported that the army overnight pushed back opposition fighters in its northern countryside. The Syrian army said that it had recaptured several towns on Sunday that had been overrun in recent days by the rebels. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister Syed Abbas Araghchi called on Syria's President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus on Sunday. During the meeting, the Iranian foreign minister described the situation in Syria as difficult. Araghchi reassured the Syrian president that Tehran was ready to support his government in its counter-offensive. Iran's foreign ministry said that Iran's military consultants will remain in Syria.
We entered Syria a year ago when the Syrian people faced the threat of terrorism. Based on the official invitation of the Syrian government to help them, our military advisor in Syria were present and are still present now. During the terrorist attack of Tahrir al-Sam on Aleppo, we dedicated General Porshami to security and stability of the region. Therefore, the presence of the Islamic Republic of Iran's advisor in Syria is not a new thing. It has already existed. So, it will continue in the future according to the wishes and the opinion of the Syrian government.
Meanwhile, a Syrian opposition leader said that the rebels would not stop fighting until the Syrian government committed itself to the United Nations process and a political transition.
I assure you that we will continue this time and we won't stop fighting until one of two things happens. Either this regime commits to entire political process to implement the UN Security Council resolution until we reach a political transition.
In other news, countries negotiating a global treaty to curb plastic pollution failed to reach an agreement on Monday, with more than 100 nations wanting to cap production, while a handful of oil producers were prepared only to target plastic waste. DD India's Antara Sinha has more.
The world is facing a daunting task. Millions of tons of plastic waste is polluting the oceans, rivers, and landscapes every year. And the world is still seeking unity to tackle the enormous challenge. However, divisions between countries have stalled negotiations on the world's first treaty to tackle plastic pollution after a terse week of talks in South Korea's Busan. Countries negotiating a global treaty to curb plastic pollution failed to reach agreement early Monday, with over 100 nations wanting to cap production, while a handful of oil producers were prepared only to target plastic waste.
Nevertheless, there is a degree of structure to what this text could potentially be, and that forms an important next step for what will be 5.2. And it is clear that there is still persisting divergence. That is the reality of these negotiations.
India reiterated the enormity of the challenge of plastic pollution and stressed that no nation alone can completely resolve the issue. India outlawed single-use plastic in 2022 and urged the use of sustainable alternatives at the United Nations-led Global Plastic Treaty negotiations in Busan, South Korea. India emphasized the need to strike a critical balance between preventing the leakage of plastic in the environment and at the same time not affecting sustainable development, particularly of developing economies. Dozens of nations want the deal to mandate a reduction of new plastic production, and there have been calls to phase out unnecessary items such as single-use plastics.
We voiced our strong concerns about ongoing calls by a small group of countries to remove binding provisions from the text that are indispensable for the treaty to be effective.
Panama leaves Busan with fire in our hearts. When we reconvene, the stakes will be higher, the devastation will be worse, and the opportunity to act will be even smaller.
But others, led by some oil-producing states like Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, have pushed back against any binding reduction call. Antara Sinha for DD India.
Pragati, which also means progress in Hindi and other Indian languages, is playing and could further play a pivotal role in turning India into a $30 trillion economy by 2047, making it a developed nation by the time it completes 100 years of its independence. The co-author of the case study on Pragati, Dr. Soumitra Datta, who is the Peter Moores Dean and Professor of Management at the Said Business School Fellow, Balliol College, University of Oxford in the UK, lauded the initiative while talking exclusively to DD India's Gautam Roy. He first spoke about how Pragati is helping in boosting the infrastructure of the country.
In India alone, there's a massive increase in investment infrastructure over the last decade. In fact, it is the order of 5 times or more. And if you look at the impact of investing 1 rupees in investment in infrastructure successfully, the actual impact on the economy could be as high as 3 rupees, so 3 times. So it's extremely important that every single rupee in investment in infrastructure is successfully leveraged for the economic growth of the country. So I do believe that if you're able to leverage and unblock some of the stuck infrastructure projects in the country, it can give great benefit to the country as a whole.
Dr. Datta also spoke about PM Modi's leadership, which has helped in taking forward Pragati initiative to a level where both the union government as well as state governments have been able to find common solution.
In effect, what is happening in the Pragati ecosystem is that you have a top leader, in this case, the Honorable Prime Minister Modi, who is in fact driving and using the power of his office to drive change both in the implementation of projects and in the culture of cooperation inside the country. So how does it actually happen? So in terms of the actual culture of change, that happens by creating an environment in which leaders from both the central and the state governments are made to collaborate and made to in fact confront hard decisions. So you actually bring the human element into play in a much more explicit manner. And at the end of the day, we all are human beings. We all love to, discuss and argue with each other. But when we are faced with a real challenge and a real goal that is given to us to solve a problem, we often are able to come to a common solution.
And Dr. Datta also says that Pragati initiative has the potential to make India a developed nation in the next 20 years.
Pragati is a very good example of how digital technologies, database, evidence-based decision-making combined with top leadership involvement, active involvement, creates the right culture for change in our country. And I think these kind of changes are extremely important for driving and preparing the country to become a developed nation in the next 20 years.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump criticized President Joe Biden's pardon of his son Hunter for charges related to a false statements on a gun background check and illegal firearm possession, calling it an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Trump also questioned whether the pardon extended to those involved in the January 6th attack who have been imprisoned for years. The White House had previously said that Biden would not pardon his son, a recovering drug addict. Hunter Biden was scheduled for sentencing on federal tax charges on 16th December. The U.S. President on Sunday issued an official pardon for his son Hunter despite assurances that he would not intervene in his legal troubles. India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati has launched Waves, an OTT platform. Waves provides complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. If you want great content for free, then please download Waves now. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and around the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. All of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.